I want to welcome you to Dream Chasers Radio, and this is the intro before the show. I want to let you know that this next interview that I had was amazing. It was amazing because there were no excuses made. This individual, this inspirational individual came on my show and tore it up. Let me tell you something. And I'm going to be straight up. I'm slacking. I'm slacking. That's his book right there. And you'll see it. Spirituality. His journey is so amazing. But not only that, he has taught me that my journey should be too. And I hope that you get the same. Here we go. And thank you so much for tuning in. I want to welcome you to Dream Chasers Radio with me, your host, Yaya Diamond. How you doing, people? What's up? We have a wonderful, wonderful interview for you today. You know what? This is going to be great because I've never really had anyone to come on and talk about the topics that we're going to be talking about today. So don't you go anywhere. We'll be right back. So we have an author on today, and you guys know how much I love authors. I mean, I purpose to write a book, but purposing to write a book doesn't mean I wrote it. So we're still purposing. But anyway, you can get us at dreamchasersradio.com. That's dreamchasersradio.com. Also 100.9 FM and 1580 AM on iHeartRadio, WCCF. And I am going to go ahead and start. We're going to welcome my guest today. You know, I'm probably going to torture his last name, and I don't mean to. But I just might. So I'm going to say, Frank, welcome to the show.
Hi, Yaya. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Awesome. Awesome. So give me a brief background about yourself.
I was raised in the town of South Hempstead, New York. It was during my college years that I honed my writing skills. I earned my associate's degree in 1981 with honors. 2 years after earning my bachelor's degree in 1986, I moved to Houston, Texas. I worked 14 years in the corporate world before becoming a writer in 2007. I published my first web article on spirituality in 2008, and my first book, Young Adolf, An Alternate History, in 2011. I published my second book, Politics in America, A Guide to the Two-Party System, in 2012. I've been on a spiritual journey ever since contracting a serious illness in 1997, which inspired me to write my latest book, Spirituality in the 21st Century.
Okay, you said illness?
Yes.
Okay. So describe your illness.
I have a psychiatric condition known as schizoaffective disorder, in which my thoughts sometimes become distorted and my emotions become withdrawn. When that happens, I lose my ability to socialize. The only thing I can do is isolate myself from others until it subsides. It's impossible for me to think clearly during such times. I take medication to keep it under control. I had signs something strange was happening in the few days leading up to my 40th birthday, which is when I lost all control. I entered into a manic state and felt compelled to throw away a lot of my extraneous belongings. Eventually, the manic state gave way to a series of prolonged depressions in which my thoughts became distorted. I was hospitalized on numerous occasions during this time. I haven't had a full episode since 2009, although I have had several smaller ones since then that would go away after a few hours or so. You see, I was an agnostic for 20 years leading up to the outbreak, and I firmly believe this illness was God's way of putting me back into spiritual alignment. It was during a low point in my illness that I renewed my faith in God. As a result, I began to view spirituality and life in a more enlightened way, which in turn inspired me to write a book on the subject.
Wow. So is that how you got started writing?
That inspired me to get started writing.
Okay. So how did you get started writing then?
I have always had a desire to express my thoughts effectively. I took a writing course in college which strengthened my skills. With the advent of email in the early 90s, that desire crystallized even further. When I lost my corporate job, I came up with the idea for a book on spirituality. I worked diligently on that idea starting in 2007. That effort led me to an article on spirituality, which in turn led to my book. Over time, I gradually added more material to it. From start to finish, it has taken me 14 years to fully develop. During that time, I published 2 other books, which I mentioned.
Wow. Okay. So, so you guys start. Okay. What inspired you to write this book, though?
One day back in 2007, I was thinking about spirituality, and the concepts of spiritual paths and voids in people's lives came to mind. As I alluded to previously, I sat down and composed a 2-paragraph article about these and other topics. I showed it to several people and got a positive response. I thought more about it and composed a 3rd paragraph about types of learning. I wanted to appeal to a wider audience, so I created a website for the article. It no longer exists. I solicited readers from anywhere and everywhere to read it and provide me with feedback. I made countless revisions to it before all was said and done. After almost 3 years of this, I finally decided to sit down and compose a book about the subject. It took me approximately 2 weeks to come up with a rough draft. It took the next 11 years to fully develop and finalize it. For the record, the article is reprinted in entirety in my chapter 1 of my book.
Wow. So who is your target audience?
Progressive minded adults 18 years or older who are not devoutly religious. More importantly, it is intended for all those who yearn for a meaning in their lives and a vision with which to achieve it. I want to provide insight into spirituality and life, which I learned growing up.
And okay, so how would you introduce your book to a friend in like a sentence or 2?
Spirituality in the 21st century enhances your understanding of spirituality, life, and the world. It guides you through the growth process, providing key insights along the way. It is designed to benefit most any spiritual journey.
Nice. And what makes this book different from others in this category?
The book cuts through religious dogma and presents the material in a straightforward, down-to-earth manner. It should be easy and enjoyable for any adult to read. In it, I talk about my life experiences in the world in general. I've been through a lot of adversity in my time, and I try to share the lessons I have learned along the way with my readers.
Wow. So when and where does your story take place?
Present day in contemporary society.
And what are 3 words that best describe this work?
Insightful, straightforward, and enlightening.
Definitely. I really love your journey so far, and what has been the most challenging part about writing this book and then the easiest? So the challenging and then the easiest.
Well, chapter 6, Achieving Enlightenment, was the most challenging one to write. It is detailed, and I wanted to get it just right. Chapter 8, Wants versus Needs, was the easiest. I've been practicing those principles my whole life.
And okay, so what themes and concepts would you like to highlight during this interview?
First, I contend there are 5 fundamental principles necessary to achieving spiritual enlightenment. Follow them closely along with the rest of the book, and you should realize it in your lifetime. Second, there are 5 C's that make a relationship work. Adhere to them closely, and you will see it grow. Third, there are 3 important lessons the Earth needs to learn in the 21st century. The planet needs to support measures that actively address these lessons more fully.
And is there anything controversial in your book?
Actually, there's more than one.
Oh.
For example, I do not believe in the devil. I don't believe God would allow a being who thrives on stealing souls on a grand scale and leading people into temptation for all eternity to coexist in his kingdom. Instead, I view the devil metaphorically as the potential for bad deeds in each of us. I do, however, wholeheartedly believe in a place called hell. Once we reach adulthood, each of us is the sole arbiter of whether we end up there or in heaven.
And what are your views on the coronavirus pandemic?
There are too many people in the world, plain and simple. The coronavirus spread relatively quickly because so many people exist in proximity to one another. That's why social distancing had to be enforced to get some space between each other. Enforcing social distancing wouldn't be as necessary if there were simply less people to go around. Overpopulation puts a strain on natural resources, resulting in overall decrease in quality of life. Traffic jams and long waiting lines are facts of modern life. Cities become increasingly guilty of urban sprawl. One way to solve the overcrowding problem is through family planning. Let me say here and now, I'm not in favor of state-mandated population control measures. Rather, I am talking about common-sense birth control methods. There are more than enough people on this planet as is. What we need to follow is a policy of zero population growth. That is where a person passes away for each person that is born. We need to get our birth rate under control, or else pandemics such as this one will become an inescapable fact of life. We were lucky up to the year 2020. Our luck has since run out.
You ain't never lied when you said that one. So you were talking about gun reform in your book. What are your views on that subject?
Too many lives are needlessly lost to gun violence. Gun reform is an absolute travesty in this country. Mass shootings keep happening, but Congress does nothing to stop them. The paralysis in Washington boils down to one simple factor. The NRA is in control of Republicans. As long as that situation perpetuates, progress will still be difficult. People have to share responsibility for changing the status quo, and that they need to vote congressmen who fail to act out of office. To realize meaningful gun reform, three things must happen. First, we need universal background checks on all gun purchases. Second, we need to ban military-style assault rifles. Third, we need to ban high-capacity magazine clips. Such measures are not going to stop all shootings, but they represent an important step in the right direction. Prayers are nice, but we need real action.
Wow. You got that down packed right there. That's good. I like that. Okay, you addressed the topic of politics in your book, right? So what are your views on that subject?
I have identified a pattern of change involving politics. It concerns the development of public freedoms. I believe God allows a particular party to come into power when he wants to grant certain rights to us. When we reach a point at which we begin taking these rights for granted, he allows the other party to come into power to effectively take them away until such time as we are willing to fight for them again. Low voter turnout is a classic example of this. The right to vote is fundamental to our democracy. Voter apathy severely diminishes that right. That is why key revisions of the Voting Rights Act were struck down by the Supreme Court in 2013. The law will remain that way until such time as we fully respect the right to vote again. As long as we behave this way, there will always be a viable opposition party. This is part of the cycle of life. That's why history often repeats itself. It's God's way of teaching us the lessons over and over again until we get it right. It is all part of God's plan. We voted in high numbers this past election, which is why Joe Biden was elected president. He will help reverse the damage done by the Trump administration. So what is the moral to the story? Treasure your rights, or else you run the risk of losing them. As you can tell, my views towards politics have evolved since writing my second book.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, yes, definitely. So share some thoughts about relationships from your book.
Many factors go into making a good relationship. Love, trust, dedication, sincerity, and romance, as well as what I call the 5 C's. 1, compatibility, a strong personal interaction. 2, communication, the ability to discuss the positive and negative aspects of the relationship in a constructive manner. 3, compassion, an emotional bond toward the other person. 4, commitment, a dedication to the success of the relationship. And 5, compromise, the ability to negotiate differences fairly and amicably. Romantically speaking, it's natural that no two people are the same, so at some point there are going to be differences. This is where good communication plays an important role. If you can't successfully resolve disputes, the relationship has a limited future, no matter how beneficial the good attributes of either partner are. Communication contributes towards building understanding and trust between the two parties, which combined with the other four C's, helps build a distinct and a healthy affection that can last a lifetime. If the bond of love between the two partners is strong, the relationship can lead to marriage. But if your prospective partner isn't able to follow the 5 C's, then he or she may not be ready for a serious relationship. One thing you don't want to do is rush into marriage.
You don't want to rush into marriage, that's for sure. Oh, definitely. So, would you like to share an excerpt from from your book with our listeners?
Sure. It is taken from chapter 13. It is abridged for succinctness. Of all the problems that exist in the world today, there is one so pervasive that it touches almost everyone in one way or another. It has been around since the dawn of humanity. Wars have been fought because of it. It is handed down from generation to generation. It manifests itself on both an individual and a societal level. This problem is intolerance. Intolerance is the unyielding adherence to one's opinions and prejudices, regardless of how damaging they may be. Tolerance, on the other hand, is the act of acceptance, the measure of a person's ability to effectively deal with difficulty. The question is, do we want to live life full of happiness or hostility? Our society is filled with intolerance against minorities and LGBT individuals, illegal immigrants, and others. For example, blacks have been disenfranchised and underprivileged throughout history, including the present. They are often unfairly targeted by law enforcement. Are we going to merely accept such practices or challenge them and become better citizens as a result? There is no room for complacency in this regard. We cannot rest our laurels and take for granted accomplishments made by previous generations. We conquered many forms of prejudice following the Civil War and the Civil Rights Movement, but our work is not done. Ultimately, we need to ask ourselves, does there need to be more or less intolerance in the God's universe? The only rational, humane answer to that question is more.
Well, you have gotten me, you've got me thinking here. You really have got me thinking. So, what is one thing that you want the listeners and the readers to take away from this work today?
The book is designed to be inspirational. No matter what your circumstance, I want readers to know there is always a better way to proceed in life so long as you put in necessary effort into finding it. I tried to provide a vision of hope towards spirituality and life in general.
And have you gotten any feedback from those who've read it?
It has been mostly positive. I've had many favorable reviews of the book. One critique I got is that it could have been a little longer, but I wanted it to be an overview of spirituality. I didn't want to weigh the reader down in too much detail. I wanted it to be a smooth read.
Wow. Where can people go to learn more about your book and about you?
They can visit my website. Just spell out my name, www.FrankDaversa.com. That's FRANK, D as in David, A, V as in Victor, ERSA.biz. B-I-Z.
Okay, so
B-I-Z.
Frank, I'm going to put it here.
There they find more information about my book along with links to purchase it from Amazon.
Okay, also on Amazon. So I put your website up. So that's FrankDaversa.biz, and they can see that and go straight there. Okay.
Great.
Awesome. I want to thank you, Frank, for being on the show. You've been an inspiration to me, and thank you so much for showing me that I'm lacking.
It's my pleasure. Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you guys so much for tuning in to Dream Chasers Radio. I mean, if you're not inspired, and then I don't know where your brain is, because you need to be inspired right about now. I mean, wait. Right when the first question went, that's when the inspiration should come. Don't forget to go to FrankDaversa.biz. That's FrankDaversa.biz. It's right there. It's underneath me right there, so that you guys can go there and check out those books. And possibly, if that's something that interests you, go ahead and get those books for yourself so you can read about it and be inspired today. There should be nothing holding you back from your dreams. Thank you again so much, Frank, for being being on the show.
Thank you, Yaya.
And thank you guys for tuning in. And until next time, don't forget to what? Dare to be different, baby.
I dare to be different.